Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we dig in deep to analyze the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. I'm Andy Nelson from thenextreel.com.
And I'm Pete Wright, also from thenextreel.com.
We are talking about Jon Favreau's 2008 film Iron Man. Back with us today, we have Scott Carrelli and Nick Jimenez from the Cornetto Minute. Hey, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us back.
Happy to be here.
Glad you could make it. We are talking about minute 57 of Iron Man. And on today's show, the minute starts with Tony belittling DUM-E, and it ends with boosting up on caffeine. A little dosage for old Tony. This is a very busy working minute.
Yeah, man, this whole movie is just really, it's just productivity.
That's right, it is.
It makes you want to do stuff. Yeah, it's kind of just watching a guy troubleshoot for 2 hours. I love it.
Yeah.
Like typing and screwing things. And this, so we get the last, so we talked yesterday about this incredibly long shot, this orbit shot around Tony working and how, how great it is that we've got this practical puppet foot that is on the desk and it works and it moves. And what we saw in the last minute, we saw the little, all the little gears moving, kind of the calf and the ankle. But in this minute, we actually answer a question that I remember actually having sitting in the theater, which is, how the hell does he get in this thing? And the end of this, sort of 35-second shot, rotating shot around Tony, we see the boot open. Oh, of course that's how he gets his foot in there. Of course that's how it works. Yeah. I just remember every one of these little reveals being so satisfying.
Oh, yeah. And it's a really great sort of transitionary beat, too, because, the boot opens and then the next thing you see is him in the boot.
Right.
So it's really just great storytelling, great editing.
That's something we've been noticing consistently throughout this film is how great Jon Favreau is at finding the right ways to jump and do these transitions that just moves the story along so effectively. It hits the humor beats really nicely. I mean, he's very consistent with that. And that's something that I think very much is he's a natural at when he's making these projects.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And that we cut from the boot, right? We cut from the boot in the garage, the beautiful, perfect shot to his, I guess, his like project camera, which is, it's not quite, better than security cam footage, but clearly this is the one that's being used by, which robot is it? Is it DUM-E or U?
That's U.
That's U. U is the camera robot. And, it's showing him trying to figure out how to use these boots to fly. And you talk about a comic moment where this movie dips its toe so beautifully into absolute slapstick. This is it.
Yeah, no, it's a vital moment in the MCU because I remember watching this for the first time and the audience exploding with laughter.
Yeah.
And it really sets a lot of new rules, which is like we like the humor. And this works.
Yep.
Yeah. The reason this moment works is because they got someone like Jon Favreau who knows how to direct comedy and knows how to stage these comedic moments and knows that it's not just enough to have the character say a quippy, fun, snarky remark. It's the way this is staged. This is funny because it's a wide shot. We see DUM-E react in as much as he can to Tony's fall.
Right.
A beat, and then he sprays him. It's great. And we see now the Russo brothers also know how to make comedy and they know how to make those comedic moments sing when they happen in these big lumbering action movies.
Yeah.
You mentioned DUM-E with the great reaction of the fire extinguisher at the end of the shot. I do think it's funny, though. DUM-E generally seems to be pretty slow and lumbering with the way that he moves around.
Sure.
Or it. I guess I'm personifying it as a he, but it's just an it. But man, does DUM-E move fast when Tony turns the boosters on and slams into the wall. Like, it is following him every moment of the way. And I'm like, that's the fastest I've ever seen that robot move. It's pretty impressive.
It is. And you'll notice U doesn't move at all. Like U, who has been adjusting and kind of moving the arm around to get the shot frame, doesn't follow Tony at all.
Yep. It just lets him kind of almost leave the frame there right up at the edge.
But it also kind of plays on the injury and why, yes, it's a comedic moment in part because, we're all saying, ow. But just like Raza in that last minute that, he was blown up and had a house fall on him. and he ended up with a pretty big scab on his forehead. And here Tony is being thrust into the angled concrete ceiling of his garage and dropped, what do you think, 14 feet to the ground on his back. And we get another quick cut and he's working at the computer again. Like,
right.
It's just one of those wonderful sort of comic book injuries.
Yeah. Well, it actually opens up a larger question that I've always had about this movie, which is how much time is passing as he's building this thing?
Oh, that's a great question. Maybe like 14 months of like physical therapy, and we've missed all of that.
Maybe that's why there's that timeline discrepancy in the MCU.
The healing.
Exactly. Right. Why it goes from 2008 to 2010 over the course of this movie.
There's actually a Netflix show. It's just like MCU Hospital, and it's just like an ER, but only for like the healing superheroes.
That's the night nurse.
There's been so much said about why Tony gets his arc reactor back sort of after Iron Man 3. Like he takes a step backward, it doesn't fit. I think there could just be an easy scene where it's like, hey, why are you wearing the thing again? Oh, it's to keep my bones from like falling apart.
Right.
I was in space for 10 seconds, for like a minute. I got like punched by a Chitauri. I got punched by a Hulk and a Thor. Yeah, like this thing that I wear just like keeps my like body from being in constant pain.
Yeah.
Exactly, my organs from falling out.
Yeah.
It's right. He's now put metal into all of his bones, and the magnet is holding everything in place.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Well, I mean, this moment is, we did have another kind of comedic moment earlier, and I think that the movie gently reminds us throughout that, hey, this is a comic book movie. It's not 100% believable. Like when Tony escapes the cave in the Mark I suit, and then midair, all of a sudden it kind of runs out of steam and sputters, and he flies down into the sand dunes. And we have that slide whistle sound as he's falling, very much saying, hey, he's going to be okay because this is a comic book movie. Again, they do that intentionally. And I think it allows it to be fun, and it doesn't have to be some dark thing.
Yeah, sort of choosing when to borrow from. It's like, even to go back to Spielberg and Lucas, that the indie can like take a beating and keep on like ticking.
Yeah, right. A couple things I wanted to point out. I think it's really odd, and I think it's interesting set decoration, and odd that on the table, this is back in the earlier part of the minute when he's working on the boot, it looks like he's got glow sticks laying on the table. And I was looking at that, I'm like, I can't figure out any reason what those would be. Like, it's no logical tool I've ever seen. It looks like he just has glow sticks laying there. And I think it just makes it a cool look, and it gives a nice blue glow to the boot as he's working on it. But it's one of those things I probably have never noticed, that it's just like the glowing stick laying on the table.
I think it's like a light table. Like I know large ones. I see large ones of that where like artists use it to sort of trace over old pencils, like with inks or things like that. Like different artists have different techniques when they're drawing comic books, and they'll have like a big, like a light table, light board, to make it easier to trace. And it kind of, it looks like a lit up portion of the table, almost like, maybe he puts the boot over it sometimes to sort of like light up the inside of it, so you can kind of see like all the inner workings while working on the whole thing. Maybe
it looks that way a little bit, although I forgot to mention this in the last minute, but you do see them very briefly in minute 56, and it really looks like a tube. It's very weird.
It does. It almost feels like a sample of his like arc reactor types. I mean, it's the same stuff.
Oh yeah,
same glow as his chest, right?
You know what I mean? It looks like it's connected to some cables and maybe just like some other kind of ancillary power source for the boot before it's connected to the suit and to his chest.
Oh yeah, sure.
That could be. That's an interesting angle on it. Yeah.
There's also like that stack of discs from the deleted scene is like right there.
Oh, that's right. They're right there on the left.
Another note I had, and this was something we were talking about when we were first learning about what he had built and with his chest, and he was talking to Yinsen in the cave, and Yinsen, he says that could power your heart for 50 lifetimes. With the number of gigajoules that the arc reactor is generating in his chest, we talked about maybe the idea is that the power in it changes over, like he can somehow control how much power it's generating at any given time. And the only thing that I can get out of that is that it changes the amount of glow that it has from time to time. And when he's working in the first part of the minute, it's a very faint glow under his shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we cut to the shot of the camera, it is like a serious glow. Like he's got a light beam, like a headlight in the middle of his chest.
Well, yeah. And I mean, he would have to be able to do that, right? Because he uses it as also a weapon, right? He has to be able to control the power output of that thing somehow, or else he'd be burning up.
Yeah.
Well, I also think, what if there's like a sort of like power augmentation thing going on where he is sort of overlaying an additional sort of power thing over the power source in his chest that is sort of like, building on top of what that is, because there's definitely something, he's wearing something over the shirt that is like creating that bright light. And it's reminiscent of like the thing that will be in his chest when he's Iron Man. But like that thing is not the same thing that's in his chest. It's connected to his chest, but
right.
They're not, it's not the same thing. So I think that's what's going on, is that he's put that thing on, and that is the thing that maybe like sends the power from his chest out to like all of the parts.
Yeah, I think that you're probably onto something there, because it does say in the script he's wearing the boots wired to a chest bandolier. Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's probably what that, because it does look like a bandolier. It's strapped right across his chest, and that piece is definitely protruding more than it does normally. Mm-hmm. So that's a good point, that I think it's the glow. It's an extra glow. It's enhancing it, and or pulling more power or something to allow it to generate the power he needs to get this repulsion technology working with these boots.
And then this is funny. It seems like they end up, so of course, I'm in our universe, the podcast cinematic universe. I've never seen Iron Man 2, but this looks more and more like Whiplash and the stuff that he put together, like the way it's like runs down his arms and that bicep cuff and all of that. Like it really feels much more sort of strappy and rudimentary.
Well, I mean, wasn't the idea of Whiplash was that he was like sort of stealing all of that technology from Tony's notes and stuff?
Oh yeah, that's how they made it not as interesting.
Right. That Tony's, I thought it was that Tony stole it from like him.
Tony's
and his dad.
Yeah, they had been working together, right? So who's stealing from who? Exactly.
Right.
I think it was interesting that in the script, it's Jarvis who's helping him. And I think it's interesting that over these last 2 minutes, we have not had any Jarvis. He's not been talking to him at all. It's only DUM-E and U that he's working with. And I don't know if they obviously scripted it, so I would think that they had Paul Bettany read the lines, but I don't know if there was a reason that they just decided to make that change. Or maybe they just said, you know what, he needs to be interacting with something other than just Jarvis.
Yeah, I kind of like it. I it really puts the weight on Tony's shoulders and Robert Downey Jr.'s shoulders, and it's pretty impressive how this is, minutes of just following your main character. He's the only human on screen for a lot of this, and it's some of the more dynamic, interesting, exciting, funny sequences in the movie, and it's watching a character try and fail and learn. Mm-hmm. And I think it's something that a lot of other blockbuster filmmakers or just filmmakers in general can learn from. I mean, the audience loves Tony and is with Tony at the end of this movie, hopefully, if you really enjoy this movie. And I think it's because a lot of movies neglect to have characters do things like try and fail and learn and grow from stuff.
That's an interesting point. I think you're right. And I think we do get to see that. And by not having Jarvis and having these kind of dumber versions, it's nice because it does really put Tony in that spot where he's learning and he's having to figure it all out. Scott, you've talked a little bit about Spider-Man in the past and all that. How do you feel that this compares with that first Spider-Man where he's kind of going through the same ropes and falling off buildings and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think that this movie takes a lot from the successes of that first Spider-Man movie. I mean, I think there's a lot of Sam Raimi in the kinds of things that, especially like the physical comedy that Favreau is using in this, and the timing on certain jokes and things like that are definitely here. There's also weirdly a little bit of J. Jonah Jameson in Tony Stark, just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, you know, I think that there's a lot of it. I think tone is something that they definitely took a little bit. They sort of like, this has always felt to me like a marriage of tone between your Christopher Nolan Batman Begins,
grounded,
right, with that Sam Raimi Spider-Man. It feels like that to me, and I think that's part of what was the plan when they sort of started Marvel Studios. Is they had this guy who had been sort of an assistant on all these movies, and saw all of them get made, and was learning from the mistakes that they were making throughout it. And then when he was given the keys to the castle, he was like, I know exactly how to tackle this.
Like a good Palpatine.
Yeah, like a good Palpatine.
Quietly watching from the back.
Yeah.
Well, I don't,
Right.
you know, I don't. I don't want to get too far away from that without at least mentioning just, you know, part of the gift of this. When you look at, you talk about our main character who's trying things and failing, and how cool that is, and the comparison to Spider-Man, which I think is so spot on. Spider-Man is ostensibly, in intention at least, a kid, and it's so much easier from a narrative perspective to let a kid try things and fail, and it's much harder to do that for an adult character. And I think adult actors, have a harder time looking dumb as hero characters. I mean, they want to be written as constantly just sort of strong, and their window for growth is very shallow.
Right.
And in this case, we get a very broad window for growth in Tony Stark and in Robert Downey Jr. And so much of that is, I think, because what did he as an actor have to lose at this point? Like, he had already woken up in his neighbor's house and like completely dosed out. Like, he was coming off of a pretty dark time in his career, and just ended up really allowing himself to invest in a way that we don't often get to see in our grown-up heroes.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to be said. This is like a summer blockbuster about like a man at this time, like in his mid 40s, completely reinventing himself and saying like, oh, a lot of what I dedicated my life to was wrong. I was wrong.
Right.
I have to almost be a child again and learn and become something else. And it's an exciting thing to build your movie around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's interesting that, I mean, here he is, this genius inventor who's running this huge industry, and it is very much like a kid. Like, he's keeping it all secret. Like, it's in his basement, right? He's just doing it like a teenager would, where he won't show anybody. And I think that speaks to that. Like, he is kind of creating this new version of himself, really kind of from the ground up.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about that. Yeah, he's kind of hiding his hobby from like Aunt May, but it's like Pepper.
Right.
And to him, he's just having this very alarming kind of public meltdown, midlife crisis. Like, we're lucky this is a couple years before Twitter really took off.
Oh, geez, right. I only had one other note for this scene. It's a little one. It's in the last moment. So we go from that comedic moment, we cut to Tony. He's back at his computer. He's working again. Now you see him working on parts for his arms. And then we see him take a drink from his coffee cup, his self-branded coffee cup, which is just great. But actually, two quick notes. The first thing is, in that first shot we cut to, I never noticed until going through this minute in scrupulous detail that his coffee cup is sitting on the desk upside down.
Oh my goodness. I have never noticed that either.
Oh, that's weird.
That looks very strange.
And I only noticed it because I was looking at it, trying to figure out the brand and stuff. And I saw that the S I'm like, well, why is the S at the end of it now? And then I realized, oh, we're looking at the bottom. It's just, I don't know if the props team just did that or what, but
yeah,
there it is. The upside down coffee cup.
Okay. What's going on that set? That somebody thought that was a good idea. And how did he not notice that the coffee cup was upside down?
I mean, they were writing it on set, Scott.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Their minds were elsewhere. Yeah.
I'm trying to get my head around the angle of where he's now sitting. Where it's because you look behind it. Oh, see, there's the jukebox. Okay, so if you back up to second 50, and we're in the garage.
Yeah.
And the jukebox is what I'm anchoring on, which is really, really far over on the left. And you kind of pan around the room, and we go straight to the sort of the corner there. And I guess hidden behind all those monitors, obscured by the monitors, I'm now scooting forward. He's sitting at this desk. There's the Wurlitzer, but there's the little kitchenette over there with a couch. It just didn't feel like there's enough room for a second kitchen on that set.
Yeah, when I was in the earlier minutes when we were first getting the lay of the land down here, when Pepper comes and talks to him when he's working on his car, we really got a good sense of the layout down here. And that's a corner where there's the couch, there's the big refrigerator over there with all the drinks and an espresso machine. And then just down the way is the Wurlitzer, and there's a workstation right there in front of the Wurlitzer, and that's where he's working at the end of the minute. At the beginning of the minute, he's working at a table that weirdly is not there when we cut to the wide shot. It would actually be on the right, under where it says record. That's where you see a couple like little objects that are on wheels. Yeah. That's where the table that he's working on should be. Okay. And weirdly, it's not. I don't know why, but DUM-E and U are rolling things around, I guess. But so, yeah, it's interesting the way that he uses his space, and he does find ways to fill most of the corners with projects in one way or another.
I wonder what goes into his thought process of choosing one computer over another for any particular work, because he has so many computers in here. Like, how does he know? Like, okay, like which computer? All right, so that's going to be my legs computer. That's going to be my arms computer. That's my chest computer. That one's building my face.
Like, he's got that monitor in that back corner over by where the little kitchenette area is, and it's always playing information. And I was wondering, like, is he just have information, like the pertinent information scrolling on every screen? So wherever he is, he can look at it and it's got the information there, or is it all different information?
Yeah, I don't know.
I have no idea.
I don't know.
But I think it speaks to, well, I mean, this is a guy who's designed his own keyboard, as we saw in in an earlier minute and in the deleted scene. You guys saw that funky keyboard he's created.
He creates things, and then he creates simpler ways of doing the complex things.
Exactly.
That's kind of like that's his move. It's like he's like, okay, this is how I do this. Now, how can I boil this down and make this as simple as just as many shortcuts as possible to do it over and over and over again. That's interesting. That's his thing.
It is his thing.
That is his thing. What would Tony Stark do? I need more of that in my life.
Yeah.
I feel like I've just learned an object lesson from Tony Stark.
That's how he has so much time to do so many things. He's only spending time on the new stuff.
Right.
Oh, it's brilliant.
And then the only other quick thing that I had was in the cup, as we see that very last shot before he picks the coffee cup up, there is a little, I don't know what it is, but it's like a little googly-eyed frog sort of thing that is sitting in the coffee cup. And as I've been watching this minute, I've been mesmerized by this little thing, and I have no idea what it is, but it fascinates me and I want one.
I think it almost looks like what was that show with the anthropomorphic like dinosaurs? There's like a sitcom, like a family sitcom of
dinosaurs.
Right. It was called Dinosaurs. It looks like one of those, but
Yeah. I think it's probably a thumb drive. That's what it seems like to me. Like a fun USB drive.
Oh, I like that idea.
Yeah.
I think it looks like Flick from A Bug's Life without the antenna.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe the antenna broke off.
Need that.
Who knows? Anything else for this minute, you guys?
Nothing for me.
Good.
That's what I got.
All right. Well, again, Scott and Nick, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Where can people track you down? What's the scoop for today?
Well, since you brought it up earlier, Spider-Man Minute, which is the podcast that I co-host with Zach Luna. And we talk about every minute of every Spider-Man movie. So we've done Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2, both by Sam Raimi, and we are gearing up to do Spider-Man 3 later this year. So that's going to be a long one and an interesting one. I've done some preliminary research on that one, and it is going to be a really fun season. I think there's a lot of really bizarre and interesting stories, behind the scenes stories to talk about how that movie came to be in the way that it came to be. So there's a lot of really cool stuff coming up in season 3 of Spider-Man Minute. But if you haven't checked it out, please go check out Spider-Man Minute seasons 1 and 2, because they're available now.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's a great show.
Thank you.
Well, everybody, that is it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the show for free over at marvelmovieminute.com. Join us over in our Discord chat room, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Next Reel. And if you like what we do and you want to support us and get some cool stuff, become a patron over at patreon.com/thenextreel. Until next time, true believers.